My name is Harold Hardinger, and I'm joined MAPS, and they invited me to speak about my wife. I joined MAPS actually in about 2018, I believe it was, and when my wife got sick, and as a support group, a member of it who was part of MAPS contacted me through my neighbor and said, Harold, you need to go and for support for your wife. So that's how I got involved, and they asked me to come to speak about her because she's a little different than your typical Parkinson patient. She was diagnosed with atypical type of Parkinson's. So.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tricia Rubacky, and I have been involved with MAPS since May of 2019, when I learned my husband had Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. The advice all pointed to MAPS for information, resources, classes, and the support group. So I immediately took advantage of going to the in-person support group. Right now, the support group is on Zoom, but we've continued it all through COVID-1, COVID-2, COVID-3, and our group includes people whose spouses, partners, friends, parents. There's the whole range of people who are taking advantage of MAPS.
So I'm going to start out and talk to you about my wife. As I said, they invited me to speak because she was atypical Parkinson's. And what I mean by that, it wasn't really diagnosed as a exact Parkinson's. They had trouble diagnosing her. She turns out she was 69 years old when she contacted this Parkinson's disease, and we've been married for 47 years. And when this happened, and she was a nurse, and I'm a nurse also. But with that said, you still are quite surprised and overwhelmed with a disease, and it wasn't really our specialty in nursing. So it was kind of new to us. And her problems really started in about 2017, when I noticed she was slowing down, and her activities, she wasn't as excited about going to the gym and traveling or going out to dinner, just lost interest and become very anxious about things in general. She'd had a history of depression. She had a history of anxiety and was being treated. We went to visit our cousin, and our cousin said, "What is wrong with Maria?" And went, "Oh my golly." And they really noticed a difference about her, and she was slower in walking, which, being you're living with someone and your own spouse, you're almost too close at times. I feel like you miss little things that gradually creep up on you. And I think this is what happened with us. And so after we come back from there, within a month, she was admitted to St. Joe's Hospital. She woke up in the middle of the night with this anxiety attack and couldn't breathe, had chest pain, took her to the ER, and they worked her up, didn't find anything. And psych come in to see her because it was anxiety, and she was being treated for that. And they decided to admit her and tried to adjust her meds and hopefully get her more stable with her anxiety. Well, she complained a lot of feet pain with that. They didn't really address that. She was there in the hospital for a couple of weeks, sent her home, and she didn't go back to work for about a month. And finally, she went back to work and did okay, but kind of slowed down. And by November, she went in the hospital again. In the meantime, I noticed I was really doing more things and her doing less, and it was all that she could do to get through a day. So it was really a gradual change in one way, but yet she was really slowing up. I kept telling her she needed to retire, and she kept blaming it on work. So that was another problem, that in our relationship, she would say it was because of work and I'd want her to retire. And she said, no, they need me. I can't retire. She wouldn't do it. Admitted again, anxiety, the same thing. She woke up in the middle of the night, had chest pain, she said, and I took her to the ER and they treated her. She never went back to work in November of 2018. And then we got through the holidays. It was tough. I remember that she just had lost interest of doing everything. And I went and bought presents, wrapped them, the grandkids and everything, the meals, did everything. She just was not interested and had anxiety and had a lot of feet pain. January, I had retired because I was doing more at home and I saw sort of the writing on the wall and I retired. And she, again, woke up, I took her to the ER, and this time, finally, they decided to do more of a workup. We got CAT scans, found a meningioma on her skull, on her brain, and some changes, microvascular in the ends. So they shipped her to University of Maryland. There she saw everybody. They just, neurology, neurosurgery, gerontology, psychiatry, medicine, a whole ton of doctors saw her and finally diagnosed her. And they finally called it atypical Parkinson's by the neurologist. Anxiety, depression, neuropathic pain in her feet, and cognitive decline. All these things, and she was on medication already in psych, and they felt like maybe she was having a reaction to her medicine. They put her in neurology, and she was there a couple of weeks and just was manic in the hospital because of pain in her feet, anxiety, just was, I thought at the time she was going to have a stroke. But they finally got her stabilized enough that we were able to send her home. And she went home with, she felt like she couldn't walk without a walker. She could, but she wouldn't. And one interesting thing in Parkinson's patients, a lot of people fall. She never fell throughout her whole time with Parkinson's. And I'll find out really interesting. She being a nurse, she was very conscious of not, falling. So my daughter quit her job, come back and help take care of her. And we took care of her and then pandemic hit. It was a constant battle of, I noticed, not taking care of my patients in my hospital, but taking care of your own spouse was totally different. You were a caregiver along with a spouse and then doing everything else with the COVID. My daughter and I both agreed we need to get caregivers. So we finally decided to get caregivers, which we felt like we had to afford to do it. And he said, Dad, that you saved your money, we need to spend on need caregivers. So that's what we did. And it helped, but I still had a lot of load of doing everything because she couldn't even go to the sink and wash a dish or cut up vegetables. She just, the dexterity, anxiety, and pain in her feet. She'd take off her shoes as soon as you put them on, get her up in the morning, put them on. By an hour, she'd have them off and her socks off because so much pain in her feet. And we were on a ton of meds and fentanyl patches and or carmelina dopa, everything, and didn't seem to help. But it was interesting when she goes see Dr. Sabat at the University of Maryland, she could walk without her walker. So she would get herself up for going to see the doctor, which I found very interesting. She performed for him. But soon as he was out of sight, she wanted a walker and in a wheelchair at home. We had all the other complications you would have in a person with Parkinson's and on medication. She was incontinent at times. She had constipation. She had swallowing problems. With this, after we saw Dr. Sabat, the first initial, we went to Hopkins to get a second opinion. I wanted her to go to Cleveland Clinic. I wanted her to try to figure out what was beyond maybe besides Parkinson's. And she refused to go because she hated to travel with neuropathic pain. She did not like riding in a car. And Hopkins says, oh, it's cognitive impairment. Well, we had cognitive decline. So what's the difference? I don't think there's really any difference. No one ever really explained the difference. I think it's the same. So we just went along, and finally she just kept declining a little bit. And finally they decided, the neuropsychiatrist said, we need to do ECT. Of course, everything by Zoom, which Maria actually loved because not traveling in the car to doctor's appointments. And through COVID, she enjoyed just looking at the computer and talking to the doctor. And what's interesting with this cognitive decline, she would do very well on our exams. She would get herself up for that and kind of give almost a false presentation at times. But as soon as she was off, she was a mess. And she refused to walk as much because it hurt, and had to put her shoes on to go outside and try to exercise. I just noticed just a little bit, everything, just a little less, sleeping longer, just gradual decline. We did the ECTs for a couple of weeks and didn't really help her. They said it would help her pain and help her cognitive decline, but maybe a little bit, but it didn't really help for her. Some people does. It was experimental kind of in a way, but it didn't really help Maria. I put her in Springwell because my daughter said, Dad, it's going to wear you out. And it was wearing me out. And people were concerned that my health was going to decline, even though I had people helping me. It was still a strain and a lot of stress. So we put her in Springwell. She did okay for a few weeks. And then I realized she was refusing them as therapy there. They said all the therapists to help her and everything. And she kept refusing them and got more sedentary. So I went to visit her on Labor Day of last year and took her outside in a wheelchair. She was happy she was outside, ate her lunch. She wanted chocolate ice cream. So I went and found chocolate ice cream. She ate that. I took her back to the room, put her in a chair, and said, okay, you take a nap. And she said, I think I will. And I went to swim at Meadowbrook, my swimming pool, which is very close to where she is staying. They called me like an hour and a half later and said she was unresponsive. Unfortunately, she passed, and we did autopsy, and she had a pulmonary embolus was the cause of her death. But along with that, they found Lewy body disease. So it was working on her, which we did not know. They suspected that at times, but never would pin down a diagnosis. So that was our story. And it was a gradual decline in a way, but it was very fast in relationship of Parkinson's, because most Parkinson's patients, as we know, last a very long time, and a gradual decline, 5, 10, 20 years. She in about 4 years, and Maria, and she was declining fast. And I guess it just happened. And it was sad, but people have told me in one way I've been lucky. Another way, it was, it's always sad. You hate to lose your spouse after 47 years, but thank you for allowing me to give my story.
Harold's always been very inspiring to me, and I knew that he was such a loving and concerned caregiver who also had a medical background. And learning that despite his medical background, he found this to be one of the most challenging experiences of his life, really, made me think twice about how in the world I was ever going to be able to deal with this. But as I maybe mentioned before, the support group has been amazing. And one of the things I felt from the beginning was that Bill wasn't having as many problems as a lot of other people. And this group was freaking me out about what the trajectory might be for Bill, my husband. And I was encouraged to stay and continue to come because Parkinson's and Parkinsonian situations differ so much. And many people fall, many people never fall, just like Harold said, his wife never fell. And when I first came into the support group, everyone was coming to me with this mantra that it was my job to keep my husband from falling. I was like, good luck with that. He has losing his balance. He really presented terrible problems with his gait and very slow walking and things like that. So I was like, I'm not gonna be able to stop that. So just to reinforce that people really do have very different experiences. And I remember Harold saying to me that I was really lucky that my husband would do exercise because Maria didn't want to exercise. And my husband was an exercise fiend. He was a soccer player. He was a runner, like marathon level runner. There wasn't anything athletic that he didn't want to do. And unfortunately, with the Parkinson's, he's had to stop running. He's mostly stopped cycling. He can go out on a bike if he's not in traffic and goes to a trail with a friend who understands, the wobbliness issue. But mostly the sports no more. And he did have to also stop driving. And I really found a lot of friends in understanding this issue of a spouse who had a decline in cognitive ability and had to stop driving. And I would say, while there are many other issues that we deal with Parkinson's, the spouse partner relationship with the patient on setting and enforcing other directions from the doctors, the neurologists, GP. My husband also has mild skin cancer, so I had a dermatologist, physical therapist, and all of a sudden I needed an RN or something to the effect so I could be taking care of everything that was going on with him. And it really changed our relationship insofar as he used to take care of me and everything. I was working, more than full time in a job in Washington, DC, and commuting. I would come home, dinner would be ready all the time. He was amazing. And then all of a sudden tables are turned. He can't stand up long enough to stand at the kitchen to even fix breakfast some days. And he had Lewy body dementia, which meant sometimes he had no sense of direction. Sometimes he had hallucinations, which meant he was seeing things in the road that weren't there. And I had no question that he was going to have to stop driving. And the only thing on my side that really kind of helped with this was that my husband was the one who had to tell his mother that she had to stop driving when she was getting up in years. And he was able to retrieve that memory and say that wasn't really fun. And his doctor was also emphatic he should not be driving. So some of these indignities are very challenging for families to deal with. And I'm going to keep going back to the support group because you actually fight tears a lot with what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But in the support group, you can talk about all of these things, and before you know it, we're all laughing and, joking and making fun of the little crazy things we do to survive and to get through it. And the other thing that I think a lot of people are experiencing and do experience in the group is that as care partners, we have anxiety, we have depression, we are looking at the patient with us and our family who has this, and then we are trying to limit our own anxiety and depression. And in the beginning, I would say I spent probably an excessive amount of time worrying about my husband falling. So here's a PS. I'm the one in the couple who has falls a lot. I have osteoporosis, and my doctor said, stop worrying about your husband falling and start worrying about yourself falling. And she said, you break something, a wrist, an elbow, an arm, a leg, an ankle. Listen, just think about how much your life will change and what you have to do right now to care for your husband. And it was a real big aha moment for me, because I could tell you anything about all of my husband's meds. I could tell you chapter and verse about his doctors, everything that he needed at every appointment. I was on it, and I wasn't even researching my own meds for my own condition for osteoporosis. So the support group reminds you to, pay attention to yourself. And sometimes you don't even know what that means. What does that mean? And sometimes it can mean I'm going to take a lavender bubble bath at 10 o'clock at night, and that's taking care of me. I have a friend whose job she has made herself chief in charge of making sure I do something for myself every day, even if it is sitting for 20 minutes and reading a magazine. And she makes me report in, what have I done for myself today? And she describes herself as a selfish person, that I am not a selfish person. So my inclination is to be doing other people's cooking, laundry, babysitting, whatever it is to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about retirement. I think that age, but we have an age difference between myself and my husband. He's almost 7 years older than I am. He retired at least 4 years before I did, and I probably wouldn't have retired had he not had this situation, but it was an untenable situation. I was going back and forth to Washington. COVID had come up. I was working on Zoom. It was ridiculous, and I just could not keep it up. And it was not easy for me to say, I can't do this anymore. But I had to make the decision to retire. And fortunately, financially, we were able to do that. And I think one of the things I've learned from just learning a lot about Lewy body dementia as well is that it takes so much energy to be the brains for another person who isn't thinking clearly, who can't manage any money, who can't remember on a consistent basis. And essentially, before you know it, you've basically become their shadow brain. You've become their second brain. And I had no idea how tiring that was going to be. And it still is very tiring. There are days that I wish I was with my friends and in my job, but I know I can't do it. And I know myself that I'm tired. Some days I don't wake up until 7 or 7:30 in the morning. And I used to be on a train at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we're knowing that I have to face my own, I am aging myself. And so in the group, I felt like I've been part of a group of people who are, without ever looking for each other to become friends, that we have found a way to support one another in a way that many other people cannot. And I'm going to be real clear about this. I have a lot of trouble getting my husband's family or even my own family to understand what we are dealing with. And they all live out of town. You'd think that this disease was contagious the way they stay away, not understanding and not paying attention, not asking. Bill has one sister-in-law in St. Louis who is a wonderful help. I have two siblings who are very, very helpful and supportive. But for the most part, I had to stop trying to make this everybody else's problem. It isn't everybody else's problem. Our own son, who's 30 years old, lives in Portland, Oregon. He tries very much to be attentive and to be supportive, but he's not here. He doesn't feel the day-to-day impact. And sometimes I call him at midnight just to cry, and he's there for me to, be a shoulder to cry on. But that's because there's a 3-hour time difference and I'm not waking him up at midnight. I'm just awake at midnight. So I also just want to say that the group means different things to different people, but I'm a joiner and I like to be a part of the group and not just get what I need from the group. I like to feel like I can be of support to people too, even though I haven't been in the group a long time. But when Rona Rosenbaum was alive and she was the person who introduced me to the organization, she left such an inspiring legacy, and she was really involved as a board member and fundraising and all kinds of things. And she never made it seem like a burden. And I've kind of tried to take that away of an attitude about the people in the MAPS group and also the people in my Lewy body dementia support group, because it is true that you can feel better sometimes, not even realizing you've been helpful to another person, even though maybe you went on the group because you needed someone else's help. And I also feel like there's a very legitimate reason to support the group financially. This is a organization, like a lot of small nonprofit organizations, that survives on contributions. And there's fun things, like there's the silent auction, and you know, I like silent auctions. I'm like crazy. I love getting on the Zoom and bidding on stuff. And hopefully we'll get to be in person and have fundraiser in person, but we haven't been the last couple of years. So I think that is probably the best thing for me to say at the end, is that I felt inspired by many people, and I hope that with what I'm going through, I can be inspiring to other people as well.
I would like to say one more thing. Rona Rosenbaum coined a saying that we all picked up in the group and sort of applied to everybody. She said, well, we go around and ask how everybody is when we go on for our support group. And when we come to Rona, she would say, well, we're inconsistently stable. And what that would mean is you would have little things that with your spouse that would be going wrong, whether it was either a medication, a little need changed, or you had a eating problem, or an elimination problem, or some little thing, but everything else was stable. But it would yet become a little crisis, but not a big crisis. So you were stable, but you weren't stable. So it was really cute little saying that we would all pick up on, and we would all mimic or say that after most times. Well, we have these problems, and what is good about the support group is everyone has gone through that at some point in time with their spouse, and you can chip in and say, oh, this is what we did, and it's oh great, that helps. So it's really nice that you can support each other in caring for your loved one. Thank you.
Thank you.